This show furnished by Karl Gerber and Employment Lawyers Group.
Talk Radio 790 KABC. You're listening to the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. We're broadcasting live in downtown, trendy Culver City tonight. Happy Father's Day! This is a Father's Day special for fathers. You have to at least be the father of a rodent to qualify as a father, that is. We're going to discuss a wide variety of issues. Whereas on Mother's Day, I was ambivalent at best about whether I might be a mother. However, tonight, I'm quite certain I fathered at least 2 wonderful sons who will appear later in the show to update you on their careers, which you can compare with what they told you about last year on this show. Some of you might find it interesting to hear what these 16-year-old folks and near 11-year-old boy has to say about his future careers. Brandon, the almost 11-year-old, is here. Do you want to say hi, Brandon?
Hello.
Hello, Brandon, and thank you for appearing. And Stefan, also known as the Russian face-slapping champion, that is the Kiev face-slapping champion of 2017. Do you want to say hi?
Hello.
He's doing the live stream tonight on the Karl Gerber with the K channel on YouTube, but we are going to hit cruising before we talk about all those father things. And we're not referring to going around looking for same-sex partners. No, sir. We're referring to spinning a 34 Ford Coupe with a blown engine along Van Nuys Boulevard, or lowriding in a 63 Chevy Impala along Whittier Boulevard, or even holding up in a 75 Chevy van with a blacked out moon window, baby. Ooh, I like that music. It's from a really good movie about cruising on the boulevard. Hopefully that gets you in the mood, because I feel like the lights have gone down on this California town, and we're moving on to the boulevard. The fresh scent of a Grease shampoo overtakes the cockpit of a red 65 Mustang filled with carefully feathered hair. The 57 Chevy cruising along our side is filled with pert, greased hair and the smell of a poser smoking a menthol. As many of you know, I was born at the tail end of a very cool generation where people actually left their house. Imagine that. And they used landlines. But I was too young for the drive-in movie scene, and I didn't have my own license when cruising was still a popular Los Angeles pastime. Although I knew there was cruising on Hollywood Boulevard, I always regarded it as an older scene. Older may have meant 25. It may have meant 30. Do you remember when you thought 30-year-olds were really old? Gosh, those were the days. I always thought Hollywood Boulevard was a cruise night on Friday night, but I might not even be right. If you know what night Hollywood Boulevard cruise night was, I suggest you call 800-222-5222 because we are taking live callers tonight on the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. I heard about Whittier Boulevard later. I also hear cruising there still happens. I know it was the scene when Antonio Villagrosa used to cruise the boulevard in his root beer brown 65 Malibu Super Sport. In some ride along Whittier Boulevard, Antonio and Gil Cedello, now a councilman, formerly a state senator, would discuss their political futures. I can tell you, Wednesday was cruise night on Van Nuys Boulevard. I remember going cruising 79 to 81. There were a lot of 55 Chevys and 57 Chevys, girls, maybe women in cars, wearing different kinds of hats, motorcycles, lots of 1930s modified dragsters, muscle cars too, even Mustangs, Mavericks, and Vegas. Hey, man, one thing I was wondering about is what the cruise boundaries were for Van Nuys Boulevard Cruise Night. Did it go from the old GM factory on Van Nuys Boulevard just south of Roscoe, where Home Depot is now, to Ventura Boulevard? Let us know. Give us a call. 800-222-5222. Although I bet a lot of people join the cruise from all different intersections. If you had a starting point for the cruise, call 800-222-5222. We want to know about your cruising experiences, what you did back in the day. You know, it's pretty interesting, those cruise nights. All kinds of stuff would happen, and I'm afraid there's some people out there, not much in their life happened after they were cruising. And, you know, how many of you got inspired to cruise by watching that movie with Jorge Lucas? I think Jorge Lucas made a movie called American Graffiti, and they had a DJ in it called Wolfman Jack, who ate a lot of popsicles. And I went to school with one of his nephews, Wolfman Jack. Yeah, that's cruise night, guys. So here's what I have to say about it. Next Saturday night on Van Nuys Boulevard. Hey, it really is going to be cruise night there. I'm not joking either. There's going to be cruising on Van Nuys Boulevard. Sometimes that happens. I've been asked to give this announcement. We meet up. There's a lot of lowriders, a lot of motorcycles, Lincolns, Cadillacs, you name it. And no drugs, no alcohol, although sometimes I do see some guys in the middle of the intersection facing off, and those lowriders, seeing who's got the better shocks and all, but it's a lot more civilized than it used to be. That's what I can tell you. And they want to keep it that way. So I believe we have a live caller on the phone, and I'd like to know if we could put him through. His name is Michael from Culver City. Michael, are you there?
I am, Mr. Gerber. How are you, sir?
Excellent. Well, thank you for calling in. Do you want to talk to us about cruising or cars?
Not exactly. Just more of a workplace question, if I may.
Okay, quickly, because this is supposed to be a workplace lawyer show, but tonight we're not having our usual penile infringers or phone sex operators. No voice actors here. We're talking about cruising. So let's make that quick. We don't want to bore the listeners.
Yeah, real quick. No problem. No cruising here. Just so I know that they passed a ban the box law recently, and I was just wondering if you could perhaps expand upon that, because I do have a misdemeanor criminal record and really looking for a job. And when it says on the application, like, there's actually no more questions where, you know, you have to tell us what you've done. So,
okay, so are you referring to a law where you can't be fired for having a crime in your background? There used to be a law about not being fired if you had one criminal conviction in your background. I'm not sure where I weigh in on this. I think if people are not honest on employment applications, they can be fired from their job later on for what's called after acquired evidence once their employer finds out. But, Michael, unfortunately, this is a cruising show, so we've got to kind of keep it the classic cars, dragsters, and all
no
that tonight.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Or minimum wage, you know, how that first car got you your first job. That's very important. All right. Well, thank you for calling, Michael. Okay, guys. So I think we've got to kind of get back into the vibe of the whole cruise scene here. Yeah, I feel that in my hair. I think my wife is sitting over there, and she's across from me because this is a Father's Day show, and, you know, gotta have the family. And when you're a workplace lawyer, there's no time off. And she's got a roach clip in her hair. Imagine that, square Janine with a roach clip in her hair. This is really cruise night, guys. All right, so we were talking about cruising on the boulevard, and I know the ladies got into that too. And you know, you probably are thinking it's time, because we've got Van Nuys Boulevard cruising this Saturday night to get into your halter tops. Yeah. How is that fitting into those halter tops, those Lee jeans, maybe even Shemenda Fair or Jordache? You know, I always thought the cruise scene was a little hipper, a little older than all those new wavers and all the people with those designer jeans. But if you want to talk about it, I do suggest you call in. But there was something called car clubs. Car clubs were big, and if you belonged to a car club, and you had a spot to go if you were cruising on the boulevard. I understand there was a club called the Wagoneers that parked in front of Praisewater Mortuary on Van Nuys Boulevard, and I presume, and I don't know, and I hope they could tell us that they all drove station wagons. If you want to call in and talk to us about that, you can do that. But if you want to call me about a labor problem like Michael did, I would suggest you do that off air at 877-525-0700 during the week. Once again, 877-525-0700 if you have an employee labor problem. I like to keep it confidential. I don't like to get too specific because sometimes someone on air has one issue and it doesn't really concern everyone else. 877-525-0700 if you want to talk about labor law during the week with me. I really am a real workplace lawyer. This is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show on Talk Radio. And we're going to be back in just a couple minutes to talk more about Van Nuys Boulevard, Whittier Boulevard, Hollywood Boulevard, and the dragsters. Feel free to call in at 800-222-5222. In the meantime, that's 800-222-5222. Talk Radio 790 KABC. This is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. Tonight, the Father's Day episode. My two sons and my wife are in studio with me tonight, and we're talking about Van Nuys Boulevard cruising, Whittier Boulevard, and Hollywood Boulevard. And so before we broke, we were talking about the clubs, the car clubs, and where they used to congregate. And I'm suggesting if you want to talk about your experiences cruising or cars, dragsters, all that, 800-222-5222 will get you on the air. That's not dust in my hair. That's gray. Just because we're talking about old things doesn't mean that we're a bunch of bunnies, dust bunnies. I don't know. I heard about that on some commercial. I don't know if it was funny. Okay, so if you'd like to talk to us about other cruising venues besides Van Nuys Boulevard, they may also have been cruising on Colorado Boulevard. I think that the people listening would like to know. You should call 800-222-5222. If you want to talk about an unofficial race strip, hopefully one that doesn't exist anymore. I understand there was drag racing on Slauson. You should call 800-222-5222. We'll talk about it on the air. I also understand there may have been some dragging on Raymar, by the old Fedco and Van Nuys, but I don't know if that was just from the movie Van Nuys Boulevard or that was real. All right, so talking about cruising here and the old days, the places I'm aware of where people would congregate at Van Nuys Boulevard, at least, was Dan's Coffee at 6576 Van Nuys Boulevard. I don't think that exists anymore. June Ellen's Donuts, the Hughes Market parking lot, of course, on Burbank and Van Nuys. And, of course, a Bob's Big Boy across from Chandler Boulevard. Many of us heard, I hope, that Mickey Dolenz hung out there a lot. And even when it wasn't cruise night, he hung out there. They had a car hop service. And that's where he was when he heard his future bandmate, guess who, Davy Jones, perform before the Beatles did. When? February 9, February 9, 1964. And so he was at Bob's, and they had a canopy and all that, and you could do that. So sometimes special cruise nights are called on Van Nuys Boulevard. I told you before we broke, there's going to be one this Saturday night. And I went to one of these about a year ago with my son, Brandon, who is here. He just waved to me. He's my youngest son. These events are usually not highly publicized, and I wasn't sure we were in the right place at the right time, but the traffic started building along Magnolia Boulevard, and we saw more and more classic cars, and then we realized cruise night was on. Yeah, we were in our near 500 horsepower Dodge Challenger, and we were part of that procession. The boulevard was lined with lowriders, a few dueling it out with their shocks. Other patches had motorcycles, bugs, Cadillacs, and cars made well before even I was born, if you can believe that. So around this time, I asked my son Brandon what he'd like to do when he was older, and he told me he'd like to go cruising. I was pretty impressed by that. Not long afterward, we watched an R-rated movie called Van Nuys Boulevard, one of the best ones with footage of the boulevard when the scene was on, and it was good. There's a lot of 1979 footage of the boulevard in that movie and also of Magic Mountain. There's another one that I've recently become informed about called Captain Midnight that features plentiful shots of Van Nuys Boulevard from a van. And if you know what kind of van that is, I'd like you to call in at 800-222-5222. There's a whole series of movies where they featured vans. There was one in Van Nuys Boulevard. And you know what they call those kind of movies? They call them vanspolitation movies, kind of like blaxploitation and sexploitation. They were called vanspolitation movies. They're about these really cool vans where all kinds of things would happen in them. So if you want to talk about your van, maybe one you had back in the day, 800-222-5222. If you had, a van that was really cool and maybe it had a bed in the back and you want to tell us what happened in that bed, well, this might be a good place. Okay, so we have a caller named Fred on the phone who's telling me I have the wrong day for cruising on Van Nuys Boulevard. So, Fred, tell me what I'm missing here.
Hi.
Hi there.
It's Wednesday night.
Wednesday night? We're going to have cruise night?
Yeah, so back
Excellent.
in the 70s, it was always Wednesdays. It was always on Wednesdays. So for the past 5 years, there's a Van Nuys car club that has been doing it once a year on Van Nuys Boulevard between Burbank and Magnolia, and it's this Wednesday evening starting at 6 p.m.
What time again?
At 6.
Okay. Now, I went to one on a Saturday night. Is that a different group?
You know what? They're recreating what used to be the 70s and 80s. That was on Wednesday night.
Wednesday night is when cruising was on Van Nuys Boulevard in the 60s, the 70s, and I'd love to know when it started if anyone knows. So, okay, it's this Wednesday night, and it starts about 6 o'clock, and it probably doesn't go on too late, does it?
No, by 9 o'clock it's already fizzled out.
And I remember the announcement.
There's still people there, though, after 9, but from 6 to 9, it'll be pretty crowded.
Okay, and I remember hearing the announcements when there was a Wednesday one a couple years back, and they said, don't be rowdy, and they don't want people congregating in the Ralph's Market parking lot? Or is that okay?
I don't know. We hang out on the street. You hope to find parking on the street between Burbank and Magnolia.
Excellent. Okay, both sides of the street, I'm sure, will be covered. And
yes.
There might even be some people at 4 and 20s, too. And hopefully there are going to be some good rides out this Wednesday night, 6 to 9, Van Nuys Boulevard between Magnolia and Burbank. Whether it goes any further north of that is to be determined, I guess. Oh, and no drugs and no liquor. That's very important, or we're going to get kicked out.
Correct. Yeah, they're getting the word out. Please, no alcohol.
Excellent. So do you go much on Wednesdays to these?
Actually, I work a lot, but my friends take all their lowriders there. And racing back in the early 70s, early 80s.
Oh, wow. Well, I really appreciate your call, Fred, and I'll probably see you there. If you see me in the Dodge Challenger, what does it say on the license plate? It says job lawyer, basically, on the license plate. Or you might see me at EMPLAW, which is the black Spider convertible. Maybe I'll take it out with one of my sons. Well, thank you again for clearing that up, Fred. Very important fact. Wednesday night, we're on Van Nuys Boulevard. If the cherry red van shows up, I'm going to be very happy. I hear it's back in action.
I'll be on a Harley Davidson with the 10 West Car Club. It's a bunch of lowriders.
Are there any trikes? Old cars. Excellent. And there might be some trikes, too.
You know what? It's whoever, so a lot of people plan to go, and then they don't show up, and then some people hear it at the last minute.
Well, I want to see some trikes, too. I hope the Harleys and the trikes are out and the whole bit. All right. Well, thank you again for calling, and see you then. All right. Okay, so we're talking about cruising on the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. And, I was talking to the sound engineer before the show started about how these hot rides started. Were they just the cheapest cars you could buy as a kid? Probably they were, because back in the 40s or maybe even the late 30s, you'd get Model Ts, but the 32 and 34 Fords became a biggie for the cruise scene. And in my era, it was muscle cars. Some people had muscle cars. Some people had tricked out Japanese cars. So every generation's a little bit different. And I am a discrimination lawyer, so I don't discriminate against cool cars. I love them all, whether it's a lowrider, whether it's a Model T, whether it's a 40s car, whether it's a muscle car, which is my era. I'm really into muscle cars, but I was really into Japanese before then. The small ones, the convertibles, all the British sports cars, everything. All that is great. And now it's funny that some of these cars from the 80s are even considered classics. So, I want to talk about speedways also. Speedways and drag strips were big, and I want to know if anyone has any racing stories. Come on, guys, call us, because it's the baby boomer scene, and I know a lot of you are listening. You went out to the speedways and drag strips. Call us at 800-222-5222 if you want to talk about what happened at the Saugus Speedway, which I understand was open between 1937 and 1995, or the San Fernando Speedway circa 1955 to 1969 near the old San Fernando Airport. Call us at 800-222-5222. If you want to tell us about any other defunct speedways, I don't think there was one in Selmar. If there was, I'd like to know. 800-222-5222 to talk about any famous drag cars, maybe the Tony Nancy loaner car. After he died, I became involved in his former property, and we're going to talk about that when we come back, because it's a kind of an interesting story I've got about that. The purple car garage is what Stefan, who's my oldest son, called it. But if you have a labor law issue, like about minimum wage, or maybe your child is working this summer and you're wondering if they're being paid right, I'd like to hear from you. Normal business hours at the office at 877-525-0700. If you have a case where you're owed wages of any kind, 877-525-0700. If you are the victim of discrimination, sexual harassment, I'd like to hear from you at 877-525-0700. I've got offices all over California, and I only represent employees, and that's all I've been doing since 1993 when I'm not fooling around with the cool cars in the garage. And Stefan here has really been in the garage lately with some of those cars, and that's been interesting to make sure he's not scratching them as he pulls them out of the garage, including the stick shift that he says he knows how to drive, but I've never given him a lesson on. All right, so this is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show, and we're talking about cruising on Van Nuys and Whittier and all that fun stuff. So we'll be back in just a couple minutes to talk about the Tony Nancy Speed Garage. Talk Radio 790 KABC. You're listening to the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. I'm Karl Gerber. I'm a real workplace lawyer. Tonight we're talking about cars. It's a Father's Day special. We're going to move on to talking about father's issues soon. And guys, we heard a commercial about the Target drive out. I don't think in their little service they have in the parking lot of Target, they're not going to have chicks on roller skates bringing your Target orders to you. That's like so Bob's Big Boy. Okay, yeah, all right. So the first time I toured the Tony Nancy Bitchin, Stichin Speed Garage, I remember going in there, and he had a bunch of die-cast models of his car, which was called the Loaner. It was a Hot Wheel model, and there was a neat purple car he was making. And if you don't know who Tony Nancy was, he did the interior for the Steve McQueen Jaguar, which we all know about. And I actually may have donated the upholstery machine that he used to do that and other cars. May have donated it. That machine and Tony Nancy would have a seahorse on the interior of those hot rods. And this guy was called the Loaner, I think, because he was able to do it all. He was able to do the mechanics, the upholstery. He didn't need anyone to help him. And that was the kind of guy maybe that would go out to the drag strips and race those cars because you had to be pretty fearless to do them. You know, I don't know if I'd do so well in some of those drag strips. The hot rodders were real characters. The problem I encountered with Tony Nancy's shop was that in 1964 he permitted an apartment on top of his shop, but he kept building all over the roof without a permit. And there were rumors about why the apartment was up there. There was a very elaborate doorbell system. What I do know is that I bought the one side of the complex from one ex-wife, and the other side of the complex was owned by another ex-wife. So, I don't know. He was a hot rodder. Call and tell us about your cruising experience. I'd like to hear more about what car clubs you might have belonged to. 800-222-5222. Tell us about your tricked out ride you went cruising on. 800-222-5222. Tell us where you used to hang out on the boulevard, whether it was Whittier, Hollywood. 800-222-5222. We need to know more about this because the whole cruising scene wasn't something that was highly documented. And I'm afraid a lot of it is being lost in history. I'm not getting calls right now about Hollywood Boulevard, which actually had a cruise night. I'd also like you to call in and tell us about the coolest car you ever had. 800-222-5222. Tell us about the best performing car you had. Mine, I feel, is a 97 Mitsubishi Spider convertible that says EMP-LAW on its license plate. It's fast and it can corner in a way a supercharged Dodge Challenger with almost 500 horses can't. Everyone's got a car story. Everyone's got a car. The car is what got you to your first job. Maybe you were paid minimum wage. Maybe you weren't. Did getting a car let you get that first job? I'd like to know about that first job because this is a workplace show. 800-222-5222. Tell us what the car and the job was. 800-222-5222. It might be a funny story. Maybe you didn't get paid. I'd like to know what hourly wage you got at your first job. 800-222-5222. To tell us what kind of a car you drove to take your driver's test. Did anyone show up in a dragster, a muscle car? You know, what about a supercar? Is anyone showing up in something like that? I'd like to know. Pretty soon, Stefan over here, you're going to be taking a driver's test, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think you're going to bring over to that test?
Not sure. I've been doing a lot of practice in various cars.
Which cars would those be?
Well, recently I've been driving the Ram truck, the big, I believe it's 20 feet, right?
No, 21, 22 with the bed out. He had the 2500 diesel, and he does a great job. He drove us from Home Depot, Oxnard, and all the way back to Sherman Oaks, Studio City area last week, and I don't know if he's going to take the Dodge Challenger to the driver's test. That might be the wrong impression we want to set, but we'll have to see about that. It looks like we've got a couple callers on the line right now, and as soon as the screener has a better idea of what they're going to tell us about, we can get them on the phone. We've been throwing out a lot of really interesting topics. The other thing is Father's Day, and everyone's kind of got maybe some advice about being a father, too. I'm in a certain career in being a father. I'm not having adult kids, but I started a tradition. Well, the lines are really heating up. I started a tradition when they were younger where I wrote them, I still do, I write them a letter every year before their birthday, and I seal it, and they're in my desk. And for Stefan, there are probably 17 letters because I wrote one before he was even born. And I've always thought about when I'd let them read those letters. I don't know when it's going to be. It's going to be sometime because I think they have to understand what's in those letters and what they mean. It's an interesting thing, even writing a letter to your son that hasn't been born yet. So if you have something you want to talk about, you can call in and talk to us about what you do as a father. We've got a lot of people on hold. While we've got them on hold, Brandon, briefly, I want to talk to you about your whole career thing, because last year when you were on, I hope everyone can hear this. Something to start thinking about, even at 9 or 15, what you're looking to work. Have you thought about a profession, Brandon?
Maybe a carpenter.
Why a carpenter?
Because I like working with wood, and I have experience because for Cub Scouts, I learned how to hammer with wood.
I believe...
Okay, Brandon, last year you told us you want to be a carpenter. What are you thinking about now?
Well, since it hasn't been too long, I think I still would be good at a carpenter.
Why do you think a carpenter?
I do have experience with tinkering, playing with wood, and I think I would be able to make a lot of things.
I think you could, because I'll tell you one thing, and I hope nobody from Home Depot is listening. When we go to Home Depot, we get 3 samples, and I guess given the quantity that I buy there, that's okay, but Brandon has learned what types of wood samples to get of the flooring variety that can be made into boats. And he's made a boat that he can go on in the pool, which is not an easy thing to do. So maybe those carpentry skills will start coming in. Look, we've got 3 people on hold, and we're probably going to want to talk to them soon about their experiences. If any of them are ready to go, can we send anyone on the line? I see you've got 3. Line 1. Okay, Don from L.A. Hi, Don.
Hi, how you doing?
Well, pretty good on this Father's Day.
I never heard your program before. It's pretty neat.
Well, it's usually a little bit different. We usually have voice actors, but we do relate back a lot to retro Los Angeles. We talk about the things that don't exist anymore, like the Laurel Plaza Mall.
Well, I'm in the legend group that I'm 92 years old, and I was into the cars in the 40s. I ran the Dry Lakes, and I was in the Coops Club, the Inglewood Coops.
Excellent.
Pearson Brothers and Edelbrock and all of.
So what was your first car?
My first car was a 29 Model A Roadster. It was given to me in 1942. After when the war started, my neighbor had it fixed trying to make a hot rod, and he had just the body and fenders are out in the yard, no tires, and he gave it to me because he had gone in the service.
Oh,
and
wow.
I had it for 10 years. I put a V8 in it finally, and then when I got out of the service in 46, I made it, really went through it, and it was on the cover of Hot Rod in 1951, and it was centerfold in 1950.
Oh my!
And it was in another magazine, a couple of other magazines, and I had a 49 coupe with an Olds 88 in it, and I did all the body work, and I did the upholstering. I used to do it all.
How long would you spend on a car? That was one of the things we were discussing before the show started.
I usually drove them as I worked on them, so 6 months a year, probably, off and on.
It's a lot of work. Were you?
Yeah, a lot of work. I did all the body work. I learned how to weld, and that one fellow was a carpenter. I found out that the more trade you learn, and you can tie them together, you can do about anything.
I agree, and I did do the body work on my '67 Carmen Ghia when I was 16 myself, but the mechanics
really?
I'm not a mechanic. What were you in L.A. for some of this racing?
I was born in L.A.
Oh, wow. So
92 years ago.
Was there racing on Slauson? I've heard about it.
Slauson Avenue, kind of out near DeMays. There was a drive-in called DeMays out on Slauson, and right above Inglewood. And there was another one called the Witch Stand.
Where was that?
Every Sunday night, the Witch Stand was on Washington Place and Sepulveda, going out in Culver City. And every Sunday night, you go everybody show up there, and about midnight, they'd go out and race on Sepulveda by the reservoir. There wasn't much traffic back in the 40s. It was quite a deal.
Do you know when cruising started on Hollywood Boulevard?
No, I never did any cruising on Hollywood, but we used to cruise to the drive-ins, other ones all over everywhere, but Hollywood was a little bit kind of compressed down in L.A., in Hollywood. kind of a bad spot to go into. You get a ticket.
Well, we had a show about drive-ins. You can go to the Karl Gerber with a K channel on YouTube, and you can hear about that. We have to break in a minute. I just want to briefly tell the listeners that besides talking about cruising, I'm a real workplace lawyer. And if you're on the phone waiting, we're going to get back to you after the commercials. I would like to hear from you about a case that you have a workplace problem at 877-525-0700 during the business week. This is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show on Talk Radio 790, and thanks again for calling, Don. Talk Radio 790 KABC. You're listening to the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. I'm Karl Gerber. This is a special Father's Day episode. I got to do some shout-outs. I got to do one to Dad Scott, or Scotty, Dad Carl, not me, Carl with a C. We're going to do one to George Gerber and Barry Gerber, my relatives, Jay Gerber, my uncle, and Arnie, whose son usually listens to the show. All right, so we've got someone on named Cornelius who's going to tell us about Tony Nancy. So Cornelius is here. Thank you for waiting.
How you doing, Carl?
Hi.
I got stories. I was a kid when I was like 7 years old in 1957. There was a racetrack down the street I didn't know much about, and I guess I was like 10 years old, and I went to San Fernando Raceway.
There you go.
Yeah, my dad was an engineer back then. He came to L.A. to work at Lockheed. And there was Tony Nancy.
Yeah, and he was a very good-looking guy too.
Oh yeah, he had the Elvis style hair. You know, always neat. He gave drag racing its class. Him and Tommy Ivo. Without those two, people didn't know what drag racing really was all about. His cars, he called one the Wedge. He developed the first rear engine dragster with a Oldsmobile engine that it was gas. And he had two of those cars. One he wrecked, I think it was the blue one he wrecked, and another one was sold to a guy in England. But, all the greats were there. Dick Landy, Mazmanian. They all tested their cars on a Sunday, and they'd go out to Lions Drag Strip at night and duel and the race. It was just San Fernando. They called it the Pond. And everybody showed there to test their motors before they went to Lions Drag Strip back then.
Could you tell the listeners where Lions Drag Strip was?
Oh, Long Beach, Wilmington. Yeah, that was the Mecca.
Oh yeah.
When I went to the last drag race, you couldn't find a seat within a mile of the place. It was so packed. It broke everybody's heart when they closed Lions.
Did you ever enter a car in one of these drag strips?
Oh, yeah, friends of mine. Yeah, we get together, put something together. Licensing wasn't really as strict as it is now because of the speeds of these things, going 300 miles an hour. We put a stock car together, run what you brung, that kind of a thing. And we get a little sticker for winning races back then. Oh, it was beautiful. It was beautiful back then.
That was one of the things I was wondering about is how would you actually get in? Was there a lot of paperwork, red tape to get into one of these races?
No. Back then they had different classes like stock, super stock, but it was a formula until everybody started fudging on the rules. So what happened was the image of super stock and stock went away. They created a formula where you could one car could leave the line earlier, the other one had to leave later, and the theory was they end up at the finish line together because guys started fudging on the rules. So NHRA had to make things different then. Those were the golden years of drag racing. That's when Chrysler came out with the 427, Plymouth, and the Rat motors. Oh, it was beautiful. Everybody could afford it back then. Not now.
Was it all men? I know the women showed up, but they didn't have a race.
Mo Downey was a clear factor when it came to women. She could compete with Don Garlitz, Coletta. Coletta basically sponsored her back then, and she was it. We had a couple other ladies, but she shined. She won a championship, I think twice, the Fuel Dragster Championship twice. She was class. She really opened the doors for women in drag racing, and she's a history. Yeah, she's still around, thank God. Yeah, but Back then, it was great. Tony, Nancy, Ivo, Stone Woods and Cook. I saw them down there once.
I really appreciate your call in about this, and I'd love to talk off air about it more. If anyone wants to call me about cars or employment law, I can be reached normal business hours at 877-525-0700. Well, thanks again for calling, Cornelius. I really appreciate it. All right, thanks. Okay, so this is sort of a Father's Day show also, and I was suggesting that I was interested in hearing from people with advice they wanted to give as fathers, because I think it's something that not all of us just are born knowing how to do like mothers. So that's something you also could call in about at 800-222-5222. I'd also like to know about the car you wish you didn't sell. 800-222-5222 to tell us about that car. If you had some really interesting experiences in a car, you can call in too at 800-222-5222. This show, by the way, for anyone who's listening for the first time, it's heard every Sunday night from 7 to 8 on this station. You also can listen to it on the Karl Gerber with a K channel on YouTube or the KABC website, which is radio.com. A lot of times we talk about the law on this show through different ways with voice actors, and it's scripted, and it's really funny. And so hopefully you'll get to hear that a little bit. But, you know what? I think a commercial's... We have a sponsor, Doughboys Studio City. We have white painter's pants for $15.99 if you're part of a Datsun truck and camper crew on cruise night. Doughboys Studio City hasn't existed in well over 25 years. Ha, ha, ha! Okay, so I'm here tonight with my two sons, Stefan and Brandon. And Stefan actually appeared on this show as the 2017 Kiev face-slapping champion. Stefan, could you do a little Russian for us?
No.
No, not tonight.
No, not tonight.
Okay, so you're going to get your driver's license pretty soon, and are you hoping to get your own car?
Yeah.
But you're not going to go cruising, are you?
Maybe. Who knows?
Well, I don't know with Stefan. Now, for Brandon, have you thought about what kind of a car you'd like to get?
Well, it depends.
What does it depend on? That sounds like a lawyer's
Maybe I can get a hippie van. Maybe that would be an interesting car.
Would that happen to be a VW?
Oh, yeah, VW bus. That sounds perfect.
We completely condone VWs here. As everyone knows, I had two Carmen Gias, and the buses, they're pretty good. I had a VW bus, but it was a later one. It was a Eurovan when the kids were first born, and you've got to have a VW. So what are you going to do with your VW bus?
Well, it can fit a lot of people. I can have parties.
Now we're talking. That sounds like the thing to do, or you're not going to... Oh, the little old lady. I wonder if we could get the little old lady from Pasadena on this show. I have a feeling we could. We've had the mayor, a simpleton, and all sorts of crazy characters on the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. I sponsor this show, and so does Remus Helms, as we all know, with his $5 billion in funding and 14 inches of endowment. But on a serious note, if you want to call me about a workplace problem at the office, we're open from about 9 in the morning till 6:30, Monday through Friday. That's 877-525-0700. It can be about a paid dispute if you weren't paid your wages at FPI or at Turnkey Vacation Rental. We already have actions pending on that. 877-525-0700. Baker Hughes, if you were paid overtime under the wrong formula, 877-525-0700. Have an action on that. ARCA San Diego, if you didn't get any meal breaks because you were not allowed, 877-525-0700. We already have an action for that. I do this throughout the state of California. I have numerous offices in Southern California. So wherever this show is being broadcast, I have an office. And pretty soon this week, pretty exciting, we moved into escrow for a Bakersfield office condo, so we'll be doing even more business there in Bakersfield. But in the meantime, I hope you go to the Karl Gerber with a K channel on YouTube to catch up on some old episodes, and you have a wonderful week of workplace abuse. And if you do, you know where to call on the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show, Talk Radio 790 KABC. Have a happy Father's Day, and thanks, kids and wife, for showing up tonight.
This show furnished by Karl Gerber and Employment Lawyers Group.